If you're like me, you've dreamed of this moment for years. The sight of a 427 SC Cobra sitting in your garage, just waiting for you to strap yourself in and fire up the monstrous 500+ horsepower big block engine. You've probably dreamed about what it would be like driving your Cobra on a road course like Mid-Ohio or Lime Rock, feeling the raw power that's just under your right foot, ready to accelerate you faster than you've ever gone in your entire life. Or maybe your dream is cruising on a Saturday night, turning heads at every stoplight, never going faster than 30, but content in the knowledge that your car could whip just about anything that's on the road today. You've probably imagined this vision ever since you were a teenager, and now you're seriously thinking about making that dream a reality. Hello, my name's Jim Colman, and I too have had those dreams for the past 30 years. Finally, about 3 years ago, I set out to turn that dream into reality. This is my Cobra, this is my garage, and this is my video. Now, you've probably already discovered that buying an original Cobra, manufactured 30-some years ago, is going to set you back about $200,000 to $300,000, and that's kind of out of the price range for most of us. So that leaves you the option of buying or building a so-called kit or replica Cobra. However, when it comes to replicas, there's an awful lot of difference in prices and options. First of all, let me explain, I'm not an expert on Cobras. I'm not a mechanic or a builder. I'm just an average Cobra enthusiast who happens to be a video producer. And usually I'm on the other side of the camera. But as a producer, I know enough to ask the right questions of people who are experts in one way or another about Cobras. And that's what this video is all about. Over the past 2 years, I've videotaped interviews with many of the major manufacturers of Cobra replicas, but more importantly, I've interviewed a good number of Cobra replica owners who talk very candidly about their experiences with their cars. I also interviewed people like Kurt Scott, the publisher of The Complete Guide to Cobra Replicas. Bill Moore, the former editor of Kit Car Illustrated magazine, offers a wealth of information. Bob McClurg, the editor of Mustang Illustrated magazine, gives a unique perspective. Dick Smith, the man who won Daytona and who has driven a Cobra faster than any man alive, talks about the difference between the original Cobras and the kit cars. And finally, Dave Radke, a man who has probably driven more Cobras than Carroll Shelby himself. Dave is the owner of House of Cobras, the only reseller of Cobras in the country. I've traveled to 3 major track events, including 2 of Kit Car Illustrated's Run and Guns and SAC 23, the Shelby American Automobile Club annual event, filming dozens of Cobras in action and driving my Cobra in 2 of them. And finally, I've driven my Cobra for over 2 years now, putting more than 5,000 miles on it in the process, and I'll share with you my experiences of living with a snake in the garage. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy Bitten by the Snake.
Carroll Shelby, when he stuck a V8 engine into a small aluminum car that came from England and transformed that AC Ace into a Cobra. The reality is that it was built to be a race car.
It's set you back, smash you in the seat. Feels like your butt's trying to grab the ground ride.
All of us when we were kids wanted a car we could push on the gas pedal and spin out. With a Cobra, the dream really happens. It is so fast. If you buy one, set up to go fast. It is so fast you can't believe it. Owning a Cobra, if you go about it right, if you're successful in the dream, if you really take the time and do it right, owning a Cobra is probably the most fun you can have with 4 wheels around you. Well, the first thing I would tell someone that's thinking about buying a Cobra is that it really is as much fun as it looks. The second thing I would say is look out, because there are so many options with a Cobra and so many ways to go that it can be so confusing you just decide to go to Porsche.
Dave is right. Even though Cobras tend to look almost identical on the outside, there are so many questions to consider when choosing a Cobra. For example, do you want one with a live rear axle or independent rear suspension? Big block or small block engine? What's the difference between a $20,000 and a $50,000 car? Who builds a better body and what constitutes better? Build the car yourself or buy one already built? The list goes on and on. To help answer these questions, I took my cameras to the Charlotte Motor Speedway where the Shelby American Automobile Club gathered for its annual get-together. I also attended the 1997 and 1998 Kit Car Illustrated Magazine's Run and Gun Shootout held at the Mid-Ohio Road Course in Lexington, Ohio, and at Gateway International Speedway near St. Louis, Missouri. Now, these events draw Cobra replicas and their owners from across the United States and Canada for several days of high-performance driving. And it also brings out replica manufacturers who are eager to display their products and answer questions.
$26,000 to $28,000. That's components. That's you putting it together.
But more importantly, it's a place where Cobra owners get a chance to really play with their toys and to test the limits of their cars and themselves in a controlled environment. Bob McClure, editor of Mustang Illustrated Magazine, explains.
Stuff like this. I mean, if it's a piece of junk, it's not going to make it around a racetrack or make it anywhere else out in the real world, out on the highways safely. You're investing a large amount of money in these things, and you see these guys for what they are. You see these cars for what they are. You see if they hold up and they don't hold up. It's a real test of the fit against the ones that aren't.
Now, more than just a shootout between Cobra builders, the Run and Gun event also enables potential buyers an opportunity to closely inspect different cars from different manufacturers. Now, this is an important first step in the process of purchasing your first kit or car. I asked Bill Moore, the former editor of Kit Car Illustrated Magazine, what was the first question that most people ask about Cobra replicas?
What Cobra should I buy? And of course the answer is so complicated by a number of factors. How much money do you have? Can you do the building and assembly yourself? What do you want to use the car for? I mean, are we cruising on Friday nights? Are we going to go take it to the edge of the envelope and push it 165 miles an hour down the straight out here? That's a whole lot of different things there. And so the answer is never easy. Everybody wants me to answer the question, but you can't answer the question for 10,000 different reasons for buying this one or that one.
Defining how you intend to use your Cobra is the first step to owning one. But the one thing about Cobras that is universal and that you must always remember is that they are all extremely fast. And if you're not careful, they can get away from you in a heartbeat.
The key thing is that when you buy yourself a Cobra, you have to remember this is going to be a lightweight car with a very short wheelbase, so when you put that right foot down, you better put it down gently. They're talking about the same way as having an egg underneath that throttle pedal, because if you put it down too hard, God only knows what's going to happen. I don't think you want to meet God that quick. So you slow it down, you learn how to handle the car. The best thing to do is to take it out to a driving school and have a professional do it, and then you're on a racetrack where everything is going in the same direction. The barriers, the runoff areas are all there. It's not like on the street. People should be taking a driving course so that they know what they do before they get to the street. Doing anything radical on the street it's not good for the sport, and it's not good for any bystanders or the individual driver himself.
Good advice, Bill. The Cobra's 90-inch wheelbase makes the car very responsive, but it also means that the rear end wants to swap places with the front end if you try to push it too much. Nice recovery. Now, of course, any vehicle can spin out, but the Cobra does it quicker than any other car I've ever driven. But in the right hands, driving a Cobra at speed is a thrill that you'll never forget. Let's take a quick lap of the Mid-Ohio road course in a Factory 5 racing Cobra. Unlike most other Cobra replicas that may use a few donated parts from other cars, the Factory 5 Cobra is unique in that it's designed from the ground up to use the entire drivetrain, steering, suspension, and electrical harness from the late model 5-liter Mustang. Mark Smith, one of the two brothers who started Factory 5, describes the car and their company.
So we based the company on three principles. One was a one-donor Mustang, using the late model Mustang 5-liter, the HO as a donor. The second thing was quality materials, because we were really disappointed at the low end of the market at what was available for the money. And the other thing was easy to build, which really ties into number one, which is the one donor. And once we found that all of the items of the car were sitting there next to the guy building it, we found the cars actually got completed, which was one of the early goals of the company, was actually, when you don't have anything out there 5 years ago, getting them out there is the game, because every car that's out there sells you 2 or 3 more. What made us start the company? In the first place, I really admired companies like ERA and Contemporary that had a really nice product that captured the spirit of some of the original cars, both in quality and the elegance of the design. But when I went to buy them, as good a value as they are sometimes, because they get good resale, I personally didn't have the $50,000 to build the car with. And so the founding principle was use this modern hot rod, this Mustang, which has the aftermarket support that is to dream about. It's a $2 billion aftermarket just to support one car. And once we could follow that wave, it was really capturing the elegance of the design, the aluminum, subframe we call it, that has all the panels inside, the 4-inch round tube frame, all the things that I considered real Cobras to be. And the challenge was doing that, the challenge wasn't making a $50,000 car, it was making a $50,000 car for a $10,000 price point. And that's where we're really successful, I think. The frame is a 4-inch round tube frame that is virtually identical to the original, including the small 3/4-inch tubing. If you're familiar with old Cobras, it's the elegance of the small tubing that allowed us to go with a really nice body that didn't have any stress applied to it. So we have an unstressed body that's 3/16 of an inch thick, hand laid. And then the 4-inch round tube frame is where all the strength comes from. There's 4 cross members on the piece. And then the capper for our product is obviously the one donor with the all aluminum interior. And that's where we captured most of the elegance of the original car at a cost people can afford.
I should point out that this particular Factory 5 car features a Kevlar body rather than a typical fiberglass body. This makes the body stronger and lighter. Factory 5 is a relative newcomer to the Cobra replica industry, but already their sales have left many other companies behind. Kurt Sells is a first-time Cobra builder who describes his experience building his Factory 5 Cobra.
One of the toughest things for me was the disassembly of the donor car. And it was really primarily because of being anxious to start assembling the Cobra. It took time to get the donor car apart. Factory 5, I believe, offered a high quality car that I could afford and a car that I could build with very little help. The only help I really needed, and this was a personal decision, was I had somebody else do the body work and the paint for me. But everything else was done here in my garage with pretty much the average tools. So I am happy with this car. I feel that I have the best car for the money. Still to this day, you know, every time I get in it, my heart pounds and I get very excited. It's a demanding car. It always has plenty of power to get your adrenaline going. It's a big attention getter. At the stoplights, people are always asking, you know, either, you know, what type of car is that, or you know, is that an original Cobra? People get very excited around them. It's a very pleasurable car to have.
Now, if you're thinking that driving a Cobra is strictly for young guys who can handle the power and performance, and not to mention the agility needed to extract oneself from the low-slung body, think again. Meet Laurie Callio, the 80-year-old founder of Midstates Classic Cars. Laurie drove his 302 small block powered car all the way from Hooper, Nebraska to Lexington, Ohio for the 1997 Rent-A-Gun. Laurie's Cobra is equipped with an automatic transmission and air conditioning to make the drive a bit more pleasant. While Laurie has officially retired from the day-to-day running of the company, he still attends as many of these events as he can.
The cars that I call my own, which basically are demonstrators for the company purposes, I have driven to most of these events throughout the country. For instance, since the run and gun started, I don't know, 8 years ago or whatever it was, and I've driven my car to those events as against trailering it, because that's what I think the car is made for.
Laurie's license plate says it all. But Laurie's never too old to race his car either. Note that his car number is also his age. Now, while his reaction time may have slowed a bit over the years, Laurie's not about to be intimidated either. Laurie's son, Bob, who now runs the day-to-day operation of the company and had to stay behind to take care of business, has turned Midstates into a company which, according to Laurie, is driven by one purpose: to serve the customer.
The customer to us is the person who tells us what he wants us to do for him. We don't have a production shop, we have a custom shop. And we make things after discussing what a customer wants in his car. We make suggestions, and we can actually make a car tailored to what he thinks a Cobra would be that he would like, you know. And every person is a little bit different. As a result, we make standard offerings of the Jaguar front and rear suspensions and the Corvette's front and rear suspensions, and of course our bread and butter Ford Mustang II type front, and the straight axle rear with a 9-inch Ford rear end, and which is the greatest number of our customers require that.
The Midstates not only makes one of the strongest steel-reinforced fiberglass bodies on the market, they also offer a hardtop for the car. The company also offers what they call their big boy model. That features a lowered floor pan and a seat that allows people over 6 feet tall to sit comfortably in the Cobra.
Now we have different cushion thicknesses. We have cushions that are this thickness, or this thickness, or this thickness, and it accommodates any person in size, short or tall. The tall person with a smaller cushion in there actually sits so much lower than standard.
Midstates is one of the more popular cars that you'll find at any event where these snakes gather. And just so you know, my Cobra is a Midstates. And at the end of this program, I'll explain why I bought this particular car and what I've learned about Cobras after driving this one for over 5,000 miles. Well, you've just met two of the replica manufacturers, and believe me, there's plenty more to come. But one thing I should point out is that while I've edited their interviews for brevity, you should contact the manufacturers that interest you for their literature. But just remember that the brochure that the manufacturer sends you should not be your only source of information. Also, there were several manufacturers that I was not able to interview for this program. So, just because I don't mention a particular manufacturer doesn't mean that you should not consider them for your Cobra project. So, that said and done, how about sit back, grab a bowl of popcorn, and enjoy the sights and sounds of drag racing at Run and Gun 97. One thing about drag racing is that while it's a lot of fun, it can also be hard on the drivetrain. A common sight in the pit area is people fixing things that break. Some things more serious than others, as the owner of this engine discovered when he dropped a piston. Now any Cobra, no matter how well built, can break something if the car is driven to extremes. Having good mechanical skills or knowing somebody with those skills will certainly benefit you even if you never race your Cobra. But one thing's for sure, at any event like the Run and Gun, if you need help, there will always be someone like Michael Chenoweth to give a lending hand.
It's just, I don't know, just call it a habit. kind of like the vet people. You know, the vet people, you know, stay together, and Cobra people stay together. Same with the Mustang crowd. You know, it's just one of those things. Is you like to help out. Plus, it breaks the monotony of working on, you know, other people's cars, you know, of everyday production cars. Plus, it gives you a chance to see how other people build their cars. You know, how they're designed, how they go together. But you know, it's just a thing of fun. It's my idea of a vacation.
Dirk Markenstein wasn't thinking vacation when his North American fiberglass Cobra broke a valve lifter on the first day of racing.
He was revving the hell out of it, and the inside came out of one of the roller lifters. So we have to pull the intake off and change one lifter.
Dirk had his car back on the track the next day. Fast forward 1 year later to the 1998 Run and Gun in St. Louis, Missouri, and guess who I run into?
How come every year you always catch me doing this?
Different car, different problem, same Michael. When you buy a Cobra kit from a manufacturer, you generally have different options as to how complete of a kit to buy. Now, this kit from Factory 5 arrives in a big box. It reminded me of the model cars I used to build as a kid. At this stage, figure on spending about 6 months to a year to complete your Cobra. Another option is to buy a rolling kit, like this one from RU Car Crafters. The suspension is already attached, the body bolted into place, and you do the rest.
Away we go!
Figure on spending 6 to 8 months to finish. The next stage is a nearly complete car with the bodywork already done. The manufacturer has completed most of the difficult work, leaving the final assembly to the buyer. Now, buying a kit in this stage of completion allows you to finish your car in a relative short time. Now, this particular kit is from Unique Motor Cars, and I talked with Unique's Alan Weaver about their product.
Well, in our deluxe pallet kit, the car is assembled. It's a complete kit, less engine, transmission, tires and wheels, paint job, battery and water hoses. And you know, anything that needs to be installed or fitted has already been installed except for the interior and the wiring harness. A deluxe pallet kit usually takes a customer less than 100 hours to complete. If you're buying a deluxe pallet car, I mean, there's very little skill at all that is involved in finishing that car. Now, if you're going to start with a basic kit or a minimum type package and do a lot of the work yourself, you need to have some mechanical skills and you know, a pretty good list of tools. But you know, we've found that over the years, if you offer a complete package, a person's going to have all the parts sooner or later anyway. And if you can sell them a complete package with a lot of the assembly done, it's probably the way to go. Probably the biggest difference in our product over some of the other companies are the hand laminated fiberglass bodies versus chopper gun bodies. You know, we use the independent suspension, jag rear. We have our own custom coilover front suspension. And quality of the accessories. You know, we stick to the original when it comes to all the accessories. We recommend, no matter who they're buying from, whether it's us or one of our competitors, to always spend the money and visit the factory. And you know, because it's hard for me to think that anybody could spend this kind of money over the phone sight unseen, but people do.
Like Alan says, people will often spend a lot of money on a replica without knowing what they're really getting. I asked Bill Moore about some of the things that people can do to educate themselves before they buy.
Well, there are a couple things they should do. They should be reading the magazine, first of all. And the second part is that gives them an overall view of what the marketplace is. They can start looking at the various companies and see what they have to say. They should also, first of all, go to a kit car show or to one of our running guns, because now you have a chance to not only see the cars side by side, but you also have a chance to talk to the manufacturers who will be there, plus the individuals who have built the cars. And the individuals who have built the cars are going to tell you, hey, it was easy to build, or it was a stinker, you know. And they're going to come out and tell you how much it actually took in a number of hours to build the car and how much it really costs in dollars.
This car is a Unique Motor Cars 289 FIA car, and we started building it in 1994. We've got a 351 Windsor Ford's SVO crate motor, a 385 horse. When I bought this car, I bought it originally to be a street car, and my brother, my dad and I are involved in some other auto racing, and as things would have it, it kind of turned into a race car also. But it still gets driven on the street. We compete in a time trial series on the East Coast about 8 times a year, 8 weekends out of the year, and a couple away events like Run and Gun and maybe some of the other club events out here. And other than that, though, it gets driven as often as possible on the street. I started looking at cars at the end of '93, and we wanted to build a 289 car, a small block car. And Unique Motor Cars at the time was one of the only companies that offered one. And I talked to a bunch of other companies, and probably as a result of the Weaver family, they're very personable, and all the good things I heard from other folks that had bought their cars, we decided to go with them. I bought this car as a deluxe pallet kit, which was basically a roller. Throw your wheels and tires on it and send the body and frame. And it took us about 3 months to build the car, but that was certainly not what I would suggest anybody else plan for a time. My dad, my brother, and I spent every night from 6 o'clock to midnight after work working on the car, and the weekends were non-existent. Every time I get in this car, the looks you get, the stares you get, and just the overall fun of maybe driving a piece of history, it's a blast.
I've had my car since 1989. That's when I first started building it, and then I finished it in '91.
Jackie Nittler's goal was to build his Cobra on a budget. He started by buying an engine out of a wrecked Mustang.
I got paid like $1,300, motor, transmission, wiring, the whole load.
Jackie had not yet decided on which company to buy his kit from until the day he ran into the founder of Midstates Classic Cars.
I had bought the motor and everything for the car. In fact, I bought the motor and all the stuff before I even built the car. And in the process of picking the motor up, I ran into Lori Callio, which was a kind of a fluke deal. And we got to talking and this and that at the salvage yard, and he said, you should come over and talk to us. So I went over there and went to a couple different places and checked, and I liked their service, and I was happy with the whole situation over there. I mean, they had it was a clean shop. The other shops I went to wasn't quite as orderly, I should say. So I just went ahead and I was committed the first day I went there.
Over the next 2 years, Jackie began to assemble his car piece by piece, saving money by building some of the parts himself.
Most of the stuff I did on this, I did all of it myself. I bought the 4-bar sketches from them. I built all my 4-bar suspension parts. I did a lot of stuff myself because of the money end of it.
Jackie's advice to someone who's thinking about building a Cobra is to buy your kit from a replica manufacturer that you can always call on for advice.
I'm sure there's some people who just go buy a car and just put it together without any help at all, without asking a question. But I would say the majority of the people can't do that. And I don't think there was ever a time that I didn't call over there when I was building this car that I didn't get help or an answer or something. I mean, it's not like, you know, you call somewhere and I don't have time to deal with it right now. They always took the time with me. I mean, I always had real good luck that way. And that's a big part, because the average person is not going to start into one of these with as many parts as there are in a car and be able to do the whole thing without having to ask somebody something. And why not ask the people you bought it from? They've already built umpteen dozen of them.
I asked Jackie if he'd ever built another Cobra.
I'm building another Midstates right now, and I've built 2 others for other people, Midstates cars. So yeah, it's quite satisfied.
Scott Foxwell set out to buy a Butler Cobra a few years ago and wound up getting more than he planned.
We went to Ron Butler's facility in Goleta to buy a Cobra kit from him, and he informed us that the business was for sale. So instead of buying a Cobra, we bought the business. What could be better?
Scott and his dad renamed the company GNS Motorsports, but the quality that the Butler Cobra is noted for has not changed.
As far as changes or improvements to the car, I don't think there are any changes or improvements that could be made to the car to make it a better product. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to buy the business. The car is an engineering perfection, its structural integrity, its quality, and the reputation that goes with it as far as Ron Butler is something that we feel we are going to work very hard to maintain and carry on.
GNS, like other companies, brings a completed car to events like the Run and Gun, but they also like to display a car without a body so that potential customers can see for themselves what goes into each car they build.
This is part of what you don't see that's in the body: the front hoop, pedal box, floor-mounted pedals, tilt and adjustable balance bar for front and rear brake bias. The pedal box is adjustable 2 inches back, front or rear. We have 2-inch by 4-inch 120-wall crash beams in the doors for crash worthiness. These beams are 2,400-pound impact tested. They have an OEM type door latch with the double safety lock on it. We stayed traditionally with the Jaguar rear end. We feel it's more appropriate in this type of car for the use that it would get. The Jaguar rear end comes with several different gear ratios available. We go through and we zero time all of the rear ends as far as bearings, bushings, seals, whatever they need. The upper shafts are 2.5-inch tubular upper shafts with oversized U-joints. We shorten our lower control arms in-house, replace all the pivot points with high-impact Delrin bushings. We have a strut rod kit that's available as an option that helps keep the rear end from deflecting. With all the added structure in this car, it is a little on the heavier side, but we feel it's important to offer our customers a car that they can take out and drive anytime they want and feel safe in and know that it's a good, solid product.
Now, if you happen to be the kind of person who, like myself, lacks the time, space, or skill required to assemble your snake, well, you can always buy a complete turnkey Cobra from any of the manufacturers featured in this program. While buying your Cobra from a reputable manufacturer is probably the best way to acquire your car, you'll most likely end up paying top dollar for it. On the other hand, buying a used Cobra from an individual who built the car himself may save you a little money. However, finding the right car for you could mean having to make many trips across country checking out Cobras for sale. But one company that takes the frustration out of finding the right car is House of Cobras, formerly known as Day-In House of Cobras. This company, with offices on both the East and West Coast, specializes in new and used Cobras. I met with House of Cobra owner Dave Radke at the 1998 Shelby American Automobile Club's annual fest held at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Dave has probably driven more Cobras than any man alive, so I figured he'd have something worthwhile to say about how to find the right Cobra. Now, I have to warn you, Dave is quite a talker, but I just couldn't bring myself to edit his comments because what Dave has to say is very worthwhile. So, sit back, relax, and listen and learn from Dave.
The first thing I would suggest to someone who's really starting to look at them is do your research. Begin your research at places on the web, and I'm sure this video will highlight some of those. Go out and see a few Cobras, drive a few of them, look under the hood, look at the fit and finish. Don't let the pretty paint job and the nice interior sway you. Look at the fit and finish of the car. Feel around the door with your finger and see if it really is flush and flat and if the door fits in its hole. Look under the hood, not at the big pretty engine. Look at everything but the engine, because the engine isn't part of the car. The car is everything but the drivetrain. The car is the firewall. Does it seal correctly? Do the fenders, are the fender inner liners tight, or are they going to rattle? Is the wiring secure? Is the welds, the first thing we look at when we look at a car is the welds on the frame. If the welds on the main rail of the frame are done correctly, then go out and look at the tiny little brackets that are put on last. If those brackets indeed match the welding on the center of the frame, you know it was all done in a jig, and it's probably all level and it's done correctly. If the welds don't match, something else has happened to your car, and that might not be the one to buy unless if you're looking for the premium car. Paint jobs, again, are not a part of the car. Don't let a paint job sell you. Don't let a set of rims sell you. They're obviously a factor in the price, but they're not a factor in the car. The real factor in the car is what does it feel like when you get in it. If it feels like a safe, comfortable, I can handle it kind of car, you're not sitting in a Cobra. If it feels right out at the edge, If it feels dangerous, if it feels comfortable, only because you know you can handle it, then it's a Cobra. I shouldn't say they should feel dangerous. You should have a lot of faith in your car. It should give you a feeling of confidence, not a feeling of danger. Indeed, there's danger involved, but it has to be confident danger. If a car rattles when you go over a railroad track, that's not a good sign. If a car vibrates at a certain speed, that might not be a bad sign. It might just need alignment. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is you really need to drive several and understand what it is you're looking for in a car. Cobras are priced, we specialize in used Cobras from all over the country, both original and replica, but I believe we're talking about replicas here. A good replica Cobra, you can buy a nice replica Cobra for under $30,000. A lot of people don't know that. Believe me, no one you ever show that car to would believe what you pay, so lie to them all the time. It's a $50,000 sports car. They all are. As you go past the 30,000 into the mid-30s to high 40s, or mid-30s to low 40s, you start getting into Cobras that have a little bit better suspension. They'll handle better on the track. They will feel better on the highway, and indeed, they will ride and corner better. As you get past 40 and 45,000, anything above 40,000 will probably certainly have independent rear ends. It'll have high dollar suspension everywhere. It'll probably have a little better paint job, a little stronger engine. It'll be a little better engineered. The wiring will be a little tighter. As you get over 40 and above, you really should be getting a premium Cobra. You shouldn't be able to find anything wrong with a $40,000 or $45,000 Cobra. There are other practical considerations you should make. A low dollar Cobra, this may surprise you, is very often more practical to own and safer than is a high dollar Cobra. A low dollar Cobra won't go as fast and it won't have as technical a suspension. It'll be a little more dependable. It's a little more, it may be wiser if you're thinking of driving a car. Once in a while on the weekends, you don't want a project, you just want a fun sports car. You might consider getting a car with a live axle rear end and some variation of the Mustang front end. It's a dependable car, you can race it across a plowed field. Not a great idea, but you can do it. When you get into the $40,000 and $50,000 and $60,000 and $80,000 Cobras, which in our opinion really don't exist, in our opinion about the best Cobra replica you're going to buy is going to be under 60 grand. Until you get to aluminum bodies, and that's another game. But as a high dollar Cobra is being driven, things are going to happen to any car. Parts wear out, little accidents happen, etc. And a high dollar Cobra will cost you way more than you think to repair. So be very careful when you're buying a Cobra as to how you're going to be using that car. If realistically you just want a Cobra, buy a medium to low dollar Cobra. If you want the Cobra, go crazy, and the sky's the limit. Here's another one that surprises people. It doesn't matter if you buy a $30,000 car or a $60,000 car. Both of them will cost you about the same amount of money to own. If you buy it at a realistic price, drive it around 3, 4, 5 years, and then sell it, you'll probably sell it for within $5,000 of what you paid for the car. What I'm saying is, here's the good news, and guys, tell your wives this part. If you buy a Cobra, it'll possibly be the cheapest car you'll ever buy over the cycle of ownership. I tell my customers at House of Cobras that if they really feel like they're making an important financial decision, consider this fact. If you were standing in your local Ford or Chevy dealer buying their lowest dollar car, a Cavalier I guess it would be, or an Escort or something, and trying to get a great deal on a new one, you'd be risking more finances, more money out of your pocket on that car you're going to lose than you would on my most expensive car. And I think my most expensive car would be a little more fun to own. So if, again, don't look at a Cobra like a big financial responsibility either. It's a bank account that goes 0 to 60 in your garage. It goes 0 to 100 in your pants. It goes 0 to 1,000 in your imagination. Cobras are just a lot of fun. One last thing about buying a Cobra. When you actually do the deal, be very careful of the company and the person that you're talking to. Understand that the person selling you the car is selling you a car. He's not going to tell you everything honestly. Very seldom did that happen. Even if he seems like a very honest guy and indeed is trying to tell you what you want to know, he might not know the facts about his car either. There are manufacturers, unfortunately, and there are private builders and assemblers that will tell you it has a 427 side oiler when indeed you're looking at a used 390. There are guys who will tell you they've got $15,000 into the engine build when in fact they've taken a used engine and painted it. There are people out there who are trying to take your money, and a Cobra is a disposable income typically. Sometimes it's tempting to buy one for that paint job and rims. Don't do that. Buy the car after you've tested it. Make sure you're going to be delivered the car. Don't pay money up front if you don't have something in your driveway up front. You might have a deposit or something involved, but typically if you're going to buy a Cobra, be very, very cautious as to the dealers that you're working with or the company, the manufacturers that you're dealing with. There are companies that have been in business 5, 10, 15, even 20 years. Those are the companies to deal with. And you want to talk to customers of those companies. You don't want to talk to their salesmen, you want to talk to their customers. You want to talk to someone who's bought a used one and asked, how did customer service treat you when you called them for parts? Or if you talk to someone who assembled a car and you're thinking about buying one from the same manufacturer, my first question is always, how'd the factory treat you? Did you feel like you were important to them? Did they send you the parts when they said they would? I don't care if there are back orders in your order, as long as they arrive. Some just don't intend to send you the parts. So the last thing I would say to those people out there about buying a Cobra, at least about the step of buying it, is be very careful. It's your money. And there are very seldom guarantees in the Cobra world. Much like driving the car, it's a seat-of-your-pants experience, even buying one. And the one final thought is, if you ever do own a Cobra, you'll be able to tell your friends for the rest of your life, man, I had a car once that was just amazing. And you feel that way every time. I have driven, wild estimate, I've driven 10,000 replica and original Cobras. I have, to this day, never gotten out of one and closed the door without turning around and looking at it again. Go buy a Cobra. It's so much fun you won't believe it.
Wow, all that on one breath of air. Just kidding, Dave. After all that narrative, let's take a break and enjoy some of the action at SAC 23. Driving on a track like the Charlotte Motor Speedway is an experience that I'll never forget. This was my first time driving my Cobra at speeds above 100 miles an hour. A passing was permitted only on the back straightaway, but just about every Cobra took advantage of it.
A dream come true for me. Have a car I built myself. I drove it up here in the mountains 2 weeks ago. I've been running around all over the Blue Ridge in it. And now here I am at a super speedway racing it on a race course. And it's just a dream come true. And to be able to have it on videotape is just the icing on the cake.
This Shelby GT350 had been on my tail for the last few laps. Finally, after getting the go-ahead to pass from the car in front of me, well, let's just say that the Mustang never had a chance.
All right.
The only disappointment at SAC 23 was that Carroll Shelby himself didn't make an appearance. However, there was a handful of original Cobras that did show up. Also on hand was Nostalgia Motor Cars, a dealer for Shelby's newest line of Cobras. I spoke with the owner of Nostalgia Motor Cars, Jim Harrell, and asked him why, after 30 years, is Carroll Shelby building Cobras again.
Well, as everyone knows, Carroll's getting up in age, and he had wanted to offer a product to give everybody a second chance, and he kind of surveyed the market at the time, which was 2 years ago, and he decided that the best opportunity was to go back and recreate the car that he orchestrated to build back in 1965. The major difference between the early 3000 series cars of the 60s and the new 4000 series cars that you see here are the fact that they upgraded the chassis wall thickness of the frame members from 095 to 125 wall. They upgraded some of the metallurgical aspects of the suspension. They did a few other modern upgrades, but the big difference is that the body today is fiberglass versus back then it was aluminum. But essentially, everything else is almost to original spec. It's about a 95% to original spec car. The car is offered basically two ways. A customer can come in and buy what's called a component package, and what he gets basically is the fundamentals to put the car together. He has to paint it, put a drivetrain in it, upholster it, gauge it, chrome it, put wheels and tires on it. Now our forte is the fact that we're in the restoration business and know the cars from the 60s. All of our customers have said, we want you to put the car together. We want it done exactly the way you know how to do it and the way it was. And that's our role in this whole game.
Well, even after 30 years, Carroll Shelby still knows how to build a beautiful car. Now, you won't hear Jim or anybody else from Shelby American calling these cars replicas, because they carry the all-important CSX serial number like the originals did. Regardless, these cars are still copies of the original, and believe me, you'll pay big bucks just to have this number on your car. I asked Jim about the price difference between Shelby's Cobras and the other replicas on the market.
To begin with, the difference in pricing of this product versus the other cars in the market is primarily the Shelby name and the CSX serial number. That is what you're paying for. The issue there is, what do you have when you're done? Do you have something, or do you have a Carroll Shelby car with his serial number and all of his written endorsements? And it's an investment value is what you're buying into. Needless to say, if it has his moniker on it, and as these cars do, they have his serial number and signatures, it certainly enhances the value, and that's the mileage you get for those extra dollars spent. But his main line and his main theme has been to recreate it as it exactly was, and that's the whole issue here.
Another Cobra manufacturer that has made significant gains in the market in the past few years is Superformance. These cars are factory assembled in South Africa and shipped to dealers in the U.S. who then install the engine and transmission. Bob and Dennis Olthoff, a father and son team from South Africa, have been Superformance dealers for over 3 years. I met with them in their shop near Charlotte, North Carolina, where they had nearly 10 Cobras ready to go. I asked Dennis what advantage Superformance Cobras offered over other manufacturers.
The biggest difference between Superformance and anybody else is the fact that a Superformance car is completely factory built. The car is not sold in kit form, so when you get it, it's a completely factory built unit. The car comes complete with MSO, we're a registered manufacturer worldwide of motor vehicles, and all the parts used are brand new. There are no reconditioned parts on the car whatsoever. The cars come in off the ship complete except for wheels and tires. So wheels and tires we fit here, we bleed the brakes, and then the car is ready to receive a motor and transmission, which a customer can do himself, or we can supply a complete turnkey car. We only install the motor and transmission once we know what that particular car is going to be getting. The most popular engine we've found has been the 351 Windsor with aluminum heads. They range from 380 horsepower up to 420. It's a new motor available right now. There are a multitude of parts available for them. We do a few of the old 427, 428s, although it's not something we'd recommend unless you know that the motor is a good one, because they are prone to giving problems unless they are built properly using new parts wherever possible. On the big block side, you've got the other option is the 460 crate motor from Ford, and we found those make a very nice motor with aluminum heads. It's also a brand new unit. So in a new car, it makes sense going with as new a motor as you can.
The Oltoffs know a thing or two about driving Cobras as well as selling them. Dennis has driven their Superformance racing Cobra to several victories in the past 2 run-and-gun events. Of course, Dennis should know a little about racing Cobras. After all, it's not every son who has a father with his own chapter in the history books of racing.
There's a new book on the market. Dave Friedman, who was Carroll Shelby's official photographer, has just put together a new book called Remembering the Shelby Years, 1962 to 1969. It has interviews with virtually everybody that had anything to do with Cobras in the 60s. And I'm fortunate enough to be in there with 4 pages with a couple of good photographs and autographed by Carroll himself. I started racing Cobras in 1963 in England. I was with the biggest Ford dealership in England when AC Cars had 2 Cobras entered at Le Mans. After they'd run there, they were handed over to us to run as a backup team to Carroll Shelby's efforts when he was having a go at the World Sports Car or GT Car Championship. I had approximately 12 first places in Cobras in England, Europe, South Africa and what was then Rhodesia. Various top 5s and top 10s. We ran at 1,000 kilometers the Nürburgring in Germany. We ran the Tourist Trophy in Goodwood, where I was 3rd in class behind Dan Gurney in a coupe and Jack Sears in one of our team cars. In '65 I took one with me to South Africa. So I've been involved with Cobras for a long, long time.
30-some years ago, the Cobra that Bob drove was not the same car that Superformance sells today.
The original Cobras were wild animals. They were, of course, based on the AC Bristol, which was built in those days when Carroll then put the V8, the small block V8s in them. They had a round tube chassis which used to flex. We used to say they're accurate within 2 yards, especially on bumpy circuits like the Nürburgring and the Targa Florio. They were wild animals, and it was great fun driving them because it's always fun to tame a wild animal.
Bob's experience racing Cobras has been put to good use in today's replicas. When the factory in South Africa started building replicas in 1986, Bob was on hand to help design the suspension that the current Superformance models employ. Although the Cobra replicas of today may look just like the originals on the outside, these modern vehicles enjoy technology that wasn't available 30 years ago.
We used the Thunderbird independent rear, which is now used on the new Mustang Cobra. We custom make the A-arms, drive shafts, but all your CV joints, wheel bearings are still the standard Ford production parts. It comes standard with the Positrack limited slip differential. On the front we copied the Mustang 2 spindle, but it's a custom made unit. Custom A-arms, you're fully adjustable for caster camber on the front. On the rear you're fully adjustable for camber and rear toe. The car's got coilover shock absorbers on all 4 corners, so you can set your ride height wherever you want. And on the shock itself you've got 24 settings on damp, so you can set the ride quality to whatever specification you'd like.
Superformance definitely builds a nice Cobra. Note that the side exhaust pipes sit a bit higher than on other Cobras. This helps the car to clear speed bumps and trailer ramps. You've already heard Dennis mention that the engine of choice for many of their cars is the 351 Windsor. But there are many other power plants that will put some bite into your snake.
The thing though with a Cobra replica is though it allows you to do a number of different combinations. God forbid they put a Chevrolet in one of these cars, but it can be done. The resale value is not nearly as high as having a genuine Ford power in there. But then when it comes to Ford engines, you could put anything from a small block Ford 289, actually a V6 even for that matter if you're so inclined, all the way up to a 427 single overhead cam Ford engine or a 460 Ford fat block, which is what they call them.
Cubic inches is a topic that will always raise a debate among Cobra fans. Of course, the Cobra purist will insist on nothing else but a rip-roaring 427 cubic inch side oiler between the fenders of their snake. After all, it's the 427 that helped to make the Cobra legendary. However, putting one of these beasts in your car will set you back around $12,000 to $14,000. That's great if you can afford it. On the other hand, some say that the Ford small block is a better match for the Cobra. In fact, it was the 289 Cobra that first made its mark in racing history. But with all the advances in engine technology over the past few decades, your choice of power plant isn't just limited to pushrod V8s. Today, you're likely to find just about anything under the hood.
Pretty much the only 6-cylinder powered Cobra kit car that there is out there. It's a Grand National driveline with pretty much stock Grand National everything. We've gotten to the 11s with it as it is. And it's a daily driver. We've had it for 3 years and it's got 17,000 miles on it. We thought it would be a perfect combination and it actually turned out better than we could expect because of the weight distribution. It's a lighter engine and we get more weight in the rear so it sticks better at the track.
From 6 cylinders to, would you believe,
Viper, 10-cylinder. Holy cow.
This beauty is built using a classic Roadster's frame and body. I asked the builder, Ed Combs, the obvious question.
Simply because we build special cars, street rods and Cobras, and we like to do something a little different. And it meets all emission requirements. It's got Wayne Qualls Thunder motors. I'm putting in a plug here, but we got all of our side pipes from him with the cats built right into them. And we just wanted to go after Carroll Shelby's record, 0 to 100 back to 0 on 13.8.
Now, while Ed didn't get the chance to break that record, his Viper-powered Cobra looked and sounded awesome on the track. The other 351 engine that Ford produced was called the Cleveland. This engine was produced in the early 70s, and depending upon which head came on the block, the 2-barrel or 4-barrel version can produce horsepower figures that come close to that of a big block. The 4-barrel Cleveland is what powers my Cobra, and it has proved to be a quite reliable engine, producing nearly 400 horsepower. Oh, one thing about owning a Cobra is that you'll never lack for friends to drive your car while you shoot pictures of it. That's my buddy Mark, who's in the process of building a Factory 5 Cobra behind the wheel of my car. Other Ford small block power plants to consider are the 289 and 302. Both are popular and plentiful. This fuel-injected 302 belongs to Dave Wehunt and sits between the fenders of his Integrity Cobra.
The engine is a 302 stroke to 317 cubic inches. It has an offset ground early forging crankshaft and steel rods, probe ultralight pistons, trick flow twisted wedge heads, 11-to-1 compression ratio, which is marginal run pump gas on. The small block cars run great. Good gas mileage. Even though you modify them, you still get good gas mileage. And you can drive them. To me, I think they're more drivable cars.
The newer Mustang 5-liter engines are also built on a 302 block and are popular choices for many Cobra builders. This engine offers the advantage of a computer-controlled fuel management system and a huge aftermarket of various performance goodies. Of course, if nothing less than a big block will light your fire, but you don't want to shell out the big bucks for a 427, well, Bill Parham of Southern Automotive builds an engine that should fit the bill.
428.
This is a 428, what I call a straight strip engine. Made 484 horsepower on the dyno last week.
It's a lot of horsepower for the money. That's the best bargain I make right there, is the 428.
It makes about 10 horsepower less than the 427, and it's about $4,000 less.
And if you believe that bigger is better, Ford and others make 500 cubic inch monster engines that you can stuff between the frame rails of your car. But before you shell out the bucks for that much horsepower, consider these words of advice.
Most people who walk in the door start talking about 600 horsepower. They've read about it somewhere. They've never driven a car with 600 horsepower. The cars weigh 2,500 pounds. If you put 380 horsepower in that car, it's got more performance than you could ever normally use on the road. So if you're looking at a nice driving motor car, you stick with the 351. It will give you good fuel consumption and be a nice, friendly, driver-friendly type of motor car, but still quick enough to beat anything else on the road.
After you decide on which engine you want for your Cobra, the next decision to make is what kind of suspension you'll need to put that power to the wheels.
Now just about all the high-end Cobras you see use some sort of independent rear axle. Now this will give you the best handling power, but at a higher price. Now using a solid axle will give you superior strength, but your car may twitch or skip sideways a little bit sometimes if you hit a rut or pothole. Now, I've driven my solid axle equipped Midstates for over 2 years, and I've never had a problem with the handling. If you're willing to pay the higher price for an independent rear suspension, then by all means go for it. Just remember that whatever unit you use, whether it's a Jaguar, Corvette, or Thunderbird, make sure that it's strong enough to handle the extra horsepower and torque that you plan on using.
One of the Cobra manufacturers that has had a lot of experience with solid axle rear ends is Johnex Cobras, a Canadian-based company.
And unlike a lot of the other companies who have believed in independent rear suspension systems, we have worked a lot, spent a lot of time with our designers on a solid axle system for a couple reasons. The cost, the initial costs, the durability, the replacement factor where you're going to races, and for the home builder in his local community to be able to get parts for it. We are using a Ford 9-inch primarily. The width of the rear end doesn't have to be narrowed, and you know, as everybody will tell you, a Ford 9-inch is just about bulletproof. We do use a very unique link to tie it all in, and it's adjustable coilover shocks in the rear. And both on road courses and in drag racing, it seems to be performing very well, and in touring rides, because we've done 2 one-lap of Americas and proven it is a good, durable rear suspension system. We also build our own independent rear suspensions using a Ford center section, but everything else we manufacture. It is very expensive. It's probably overkill for street use application.
I asked John if there was a dollar advantage to buying from a Canadian-based company like Johnex.
The advantage of dealing across the border in Canada, everybody seems to think that because of the huge dollar difference, your dollar being worth, in some cases, 42 cents more in Canada is a deciding factor on being a good buy. Johnex is a very expensive product. It is a very well-developed product. Its intended use is for racing. It makes a fantastic street machine, and it does not have to be raced. And we put components or start off with what we call our basic models and upgrade from our basic models for racing application. The dollar difference, if it wasn't for the dollar being where it's at, Johnex couldn't compete against any of the companies out there. Our product would just be too expensive. And as far as coming across to Canada and purchasing from us now, there is no duties being assessed when you come down into the States. So there is really no reason to be afraid of the border. And we've delivered to every single person that we've sold to.
The Jaguar rear end is a popular option for many Cobra builders. But one thing you may want to consider with the Jaguar setup is that changing the disc brake pads can mean removing the entire unit. as the brakes are located inboard and not easily accessible. There are companies that make conversion kits to move the brakes out to the rear wheels. And speaking of brakes, don't be fooled into thinking you need racing pads for your disc brakes if all you do is drive your Cobra on the street. Pads designed for racing applications won't work properly until they've warmed up to temperatures higher than you'll likely get driving your Cobra around town. Run and Gun 98 was held at Gateway International Speedway just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. As usual, there were plenty of Cobras on hand, all vying for the top dog trophy given to the car who turned in the fastest time in the combined road and drag strip events. Well, the competition was awesome. We all got plenty of track time to practice before the time trials were held. And just like at SAC 23, I got a chance to drive my car at speeds way above legal highway limits. Now, my car is set up for street driving, with standard radial tires and a small block engine, and so I was certainly not the fastest driver, not by a long shot. But just a few cars away from where I parked my Cobra, I noticed an older guy in a driving suit that had seen better days. He was driving a Factory 5 Cobra that belonged to a friend of his. He seemed to really be enjoying himself, so I asked him if he'd ever driven race cars before.
Well, I've driven a lot of cars over the years, of all kinds, Can-Am on to Trans Am, but it seems like I've made a very good mark driving Cobras, and Cobras have been my forte since 1966.
Watching this guy handle the Factory 5 car on the track seemed to prove that, indeed, he did know a thing or two about driving fast. So I asked him, how fast had he ever driven a Cobra?
Back at Daytona, when I won Daytona, I always remember going on the victory stand and I couldn't hear. We didn't have the brains then to plug our ears. Now you got a little bit more smarts and you plug your ears so you can hear a little longer in life. And I remember on the victory stand, the van asking me, he says, how fast? He says, oh, could you have gone 200? And I thought I heard him right, but I couldn't hear. And I says, how fast? He says, could you have gone 200? I says, hell, I don't know how fast I was going as it was. And he says, well, you just set the world's record for an unlimited production car, took it away from Ferrari, 198.5.
Anybody who knows his or her Cobra history would immediately know that this man could only be the legendary Dick Smith. And of course, his t-shirt kind of gives him away too. Some would say that he is the most successful Cobra driver of all times. Dick still owns number 198, the original Cobra that he used to win at Daytona. And he says that he still races the car from time to time. But today he was happy just being behind the wheel of Gordon Levy's car. I asked Dick how the replicas fared compared to his original.
The real Cobras, while they're really good performing cars, you have rules and limitations. And you have to live within those limitations to run the car. On the replicas, kits, either way you want to call them, there aren't any rules. You pretty much run what you brung. And that's what really makes it a lot of fun, because whatever your idea for a car is, you can stick it into it. And that's what makes these type cars, the replicas and the kits, so much fun.
I think that qualifies as a politically correct answer. Nevertheless, Dick was obviously having a lot of fun. My final question for him was, what was his top speed today at Gateway?
I was pulling 6,500 in fourth gear, and that's about 165.
I just hope I'm having as much fun as Dick Smith when I'm 64. The Run and Gun 98 was a lot of fun, but anytime you mix a lot of horsepower with a lightweight car, sometimes things can go wrong.
The driver jumped out while we were still standing on the start-finish line. He jumped out already. That must have been him. And but there was flames from right here on down. So I don't know, something broke, and he just, you can see it starts clear up on the other side of the orange pylon there.
You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Shaking, but...
Yeah, pretty shaken, but all right.
Good. That's your all in one piece, but well, what happened?
All at once, the back end came out from behind me, started to come around front. I guess it went all the way around. By the time I came to rest here, it was totally on fire.
John,
yeah.
take a ride.
I guess I lost the rear end. Looked like rear end. One of the welds cracked or something. Came away from the body.
The Skip O'Toole walked away from this crash. The cause? A broken weld on the rear axle. The Skip will be able to repair his car, but an accident like this only serves to illustrate the importance of making sure that your suspension can handle the horsepower that you build into your Cobra and the maneuvers that you intend to put it through. One other bit of misfortune happened during the 4 days of running at Gateway. The Factory 5 racing Cobra that you saw earlier in this program ran off the track with Factory 5 owner Dave Smith behind the wheel. The car flipped when Dave hit the retaining wall, but thanks to the roll bar, Dave walked away from this incident. Incredibly, the team had the car back on the track in a matter of hours.
Two of our engineers worked on it, and my brother Mark and I and Greg and all these guys. So we'll see if it's tight, and you know, hopefully I won't crash again.
All right, well, good luck.
Thank you.
With the help of a few new parts and several rolls of duct tape, the car with Dave's brother Mark behind the wheel went on to win the King of the Hill honor in bracket drag racing. One of the replica manufacturers that has seen its share of ups and downs over the past few years has been Shell Valley. However, new owner Rich Anderson brings his expertise in running large corporations to bear and has set about to steer Shell Valley in a new direction.
I bought Shell Valley a year ago, and what we have done is to change a lot of the molds, the fixturing. We're building a much better car today than what we were a year ago. We hired some consultants to come in to help us with our fiberglassing to improve that. The fit of the car is much better than what it has been in the past, but primarily I think that we are more customer friendly now than what we've ever been in the past. Our cars are in a price category, it's a little bit different than a lot of the others. We've tried to make an affordable Cobra. As an example, a turnkey car like the one in the back here is about $26,000. A lot of the competition have cars that'll run up to $50,000 and $60,000. We can build that type of a car, but we've chosen to keep it into the kit range that people can afford and into the turnkey that's more affordable. We offer a complete assembly manual and a video. It's a step-by-step, walk it through, but probably more important is anytime someone buys a kit or a car from us, one of the things that we do is that we give them not only an 800 number to call into the office and help with the assembly of their car, but we also give home phone numbers to our customers so that they can call the technicians at home at night, because so many people are working on these cars in the evenings, and it'd always be nice to get that answer right on the spot. So we take a lot of pride in that, and our technicians want people to call them at home if they run into a problem, because they can walk them through that problem much quicker than trying to get through it themselves. When I came into this industry, one of the things that I had heard is that there was about 50% of the kits in the industry didn't get completed. What we would like to do is to make sure that every Shell Valley kit is completed. We want to do everything that we can to make sure that that happens and offer all the assistance that we can. Also, a lot of times it's a bigger task than a lot of people think it is. They get a kit and they start building that car, and they don't realize probably some of the work and effort that does go into it. It's a big job. But on the other hand, it's a real fun process, and the result, of course, is a beautiful Cobra when you get done.
Well, you've met many of the Cobra manufacturers, heard from the former editor of Kit Car Illustrated magazine, listened to Dave Radke, and hopefully learn from some of the people who have built and driven Cobras. But there's one more interview that I've purposely saved for last. This man, Kurt Scott, has earned the reputation for being the watchdog of the kit car industry by single-handedly taking on several of the kit car manufacturers who have given this industry a black eye over the years. Kurt is also the publisher of The Complete Guide to Cobra Replicas, shown here autographing my copy of the guide. He also started and maintains the Cobra Country website, an invaluable tool that you should take advantage of in researching your Cobra project. I met with Kurt at SAC 23, where he was busy taking photographs of, what else, Cobras. Kurt took me up on my offer to escape the heat of Charlotte and talk for a while in the comfort of our motorhome. The first thing I wanted to know was how he got his reputation as the watchdog of the kit car industry.
I didn't intend to become a watchdog. I'm a photographer and a writer. I didn't really care to be a watchdog. What catapulted me into it was Classic Motor Carriages in Miami, Florida, which also went by the name of FiberFab International. And that was a $200–300 million scam. And they used tactics for selling and inducing you to send money and tactics in producing, the tactics that were, I considered to be very deceptive, very fraudulent, and it also, the quality of their cars left a lot to be desired. Not necessarily their Cobras so much. It's a lot more difficult to mess up a Cobra. You got to work at it to screw up a Cobra. But their other cars, especially their 33, 34 Fords, the Porsche Speedsters, their Gazelles, their MGTs, were just virtually unbuildable junk. And they were giving a bad name to an industry, the industry being replicas, Cobras, and street rods, that really was not the same industry they were in. They were in the industry of being a telemarketing scam, and the rest of the industry is industry producing cars legitimately. I mean, most of the rest of the industry. So they were giving the industry a black eye when they weren't even really part of the industry. And so that pulled me into that arena of whistleblowing and of watchdog status that I really wasn't endeavoring to be into, but it was like quicksand. I just got pulled deeper and deeper into it, and it's I try to avoid it as much as possible now, but occasionally I find myself writing a rather hard-hitting editorial.
Kurt began publishing the Complete Guide to Cobra Replicas several years ago. In it, among other things, he lists the 10 rules for selecting and purchasing your Cobra. Most of those rules have been covered in this program. But I asked him, what was the first thing someone should do when looking for a Cobra? Well, the answer surprised me.
The first thing that I stop strangers on the street to tell them is don't trust what they read in automotive magazines. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm a writer, and automotive writers know that you can't trust what you read in many automobile magazines. We take advertising too, but for some reason automotive magazines, more than other types, computer magazines, camera magazines, fishing equipment magazines, for the most part, most of the time, you can rely upon what you read in those magazines. There seems to be a different scenario for automotive magazines. So if you're looking to buy a Cobra, read the magazines for entertainment, but don't use what you see and read in there for your consumer information. That's a gentle prod, but it's advice we've been giving our readers since 1983, and it always astonishes me that people don't take the advice, and when they get in trouble and I ask them where they got their information on Cobras, well, I saw them written up in Kit Car Magazine. They got a real favorable, or Kit Car Illustrated, or Super Ford, or whatever the magazine is, and they got a real favorable write-up, real favorable review. I've seen their ads for 2 years and they must be good. Read my lips. Don't trust what you see and reading in the car magazines. There's other sources of information. Our book is but one of them. Our Cobra Country website is another. Good builders and assemblers that don't have an affiliation with any particular manufacturer is another source of information. Clubs are another good source. The SAC is a good source, the Shelby American Club. There are Cobra clubs around the country. There are Shelby American Automobile Club affiliates around the country. All of those are resources for narrowing down your field of choices of Cobra replicas so that you choose a good company with a good reputation and builds a good product that they stand behind, instead of relying upon what you see and read in the magazine and thinking you're getting objective information, because you almost inevitably are not.
Finally, I asked Kurt about the general state of the Cobra replica industry.
Fortunately, Cobras they're a bright spot in the replica car industry in general. When I say that, I'm referring to other replica cars, other kit cars, street rod reproductions and so forth. Most of the Cobras on the road, Cobra manufacturers today, are Cobra enthusiasts themselves. They produce quality product and stand behind it, to one degree or another, but we very seldom get complaints about most of the manufacturers. We have never received a single complaint about. Without mentioning names, I'll tell you that at least half the Cobra manufacturers in the industry, we've never gotten a complaint about, of any sort, or a complaint so minor that it doesn't even count. And there are only a few manufacturers that we've gotten more than a few complaints about. So that's a bright sign. But automotive enthusiasts tend to be shoot from the hip first and then do your research, and then wish you did research later. So my advice, as it has always been, is stop what you're doing, do your research first, gather all the info. It's a lot cheaper to gather all the information you can up front than it is to try to undo the damage if you made the wrong decision when you purchased your car.
By now, you should have a better understanding of the car that Carroll Shelby made into a legend. I hope you've learned a few things watching this program and have enjoyed seeing and hearing the sights and sounds of these beautiful cars in action. At the beginning of this video, I promised that I'd share a few of the things that I've learned about Cobra replicas. Well, first, like Dave Radke says, driving one of these cars is indeed the most fun you can have on four wheels. But in the 2 years that I've owned my Midstates Cobra, the thing that surprised me the most was simply that I don't drive my car as much as I thought I would. Before I took delivery of my car, I'd daydream about driving it to work or driving it to the golf course or out to restaurants, and indeed I've done all those things. But the reality is that I tend to save my driving for the weekends. Part of the reason is because my car has a rather heavy clutch, and driving it in stop-and-go traffic really isn't a whole lot of fun. But I think that the main reason I save my driving for weekends is simply to have a chance to really enjoy my Cobra out on an open road. There is simply nothing better than driving one of these cars on a lonely country road with the wind in your face and the sound of the twin pipes playing the song of a finely tuned engine. Or on Friday or Saturday nights, just cruising up and down the main drag, stopping for some ice cream, or going to a cruise-in, especially with a friend in another Cobra. Well, it's a whole lot of fun. Now that's the positive side of living with a snake in the garage. On the negative side, and there really isn't much of a negative side, but I'm being honest here, this car has taught me more about rebuilding carburetors and tracking down electrical gremlins than I thought I'd ever see. Now, I bought my car from a builder in New Mexico, sight unseen, but I had done my homework and had decided that a Midstates Cobra was the car I wanted. I found this car on the Cobra Country website on the internet. This car was built by a professional builder, and I have to say that he did an outstanding job. With the exception of some of the electrical wiring, I was experiencing a problem with my gauges acting erratically. But with the help of a friend, we tracked down the problem to a faulty ground wire. Now the car works perfectly. I'm very pleased with the fit and finish of the Midstates body and the sturdy frame. All my other problems have been with the engine, and if you remember what Dave Radke said, the engine is not really a part of the kit. I've had to replace valve seals, the harmonic balancer, the alternator, header gaskets, manifold gaskets, and rebuild the carburetor. But hey, it's a 30-year-old high-performance engine with 10,000 miles on it since it was rebuilt, so these things are to be expected. Would I buy another Midstates? Without question. Would I put in a high-performance engine with a double-pumper racing carburetor? Probably not, as I tend to drive my car on the street 99% of the time. I would think about a 351 Windsor with a milder cam and a street carburetor or fuel injection. But hey, I'm perfectly happy driving my car, it's just that it takes a little bit more tweaking and tuning from time to time. Now, owning one of these has fulfilled a lifelong dream for me. But the most important thing that this car has brought me are the friends that I've made who share the same interest in Cobra replicas. You've met some of them in this program, and I would like to thank them for all the help and assistance that they've given me, not only in the production of this video, but also helping me with minor problems that I've encountered with my Cobra. Cars may come and go, but these people will always remain my friends.
So there you have it. Living with a snake in the garage really becomes a way of life. So go ahead, build your dream car, find that open road, and enjoy the experience.